I've brought you a fresh supply of coal, sir.
The old butler, Ralph. He seemed about the same age as the house itself.
And that is?
Elizabethan, mainly. Mind you, his wife was probably even older.
There, sir. You should be more comfortable now, I hope. It's bitterer weather tonight.
I know. There was no trap at the station. I walked and froze.
Oh, dear. All the way from town. And these rooms are cold.
Oh, don't worry. Most of us Cape veterans are in pretty rude health. I'll take no chill.
It might help to close the curtains, sir. These big windows.
No, don't. Thank you. It's a fine night, and I like a moonlit garden. Reminds me I'm back in England, Ralph. Home and safe.
If you don't mind my asking, sir.
Far away.
I couldn't help hearing what you said of young Master Godfrey. At dinner.
It's good to have an appreciative audience.
Well, you may know my wife nursed him when he was a young lad.
Certainly. I have often heard him say she was second in his affections only to his mother.
Oh, that pleases me to hear, sir. So you might say from that I'm in a way to be his foster father.
It's natural you should take an interest.
You say Master Godfrey carried himself well, sir?
By God, I do. Once, he pulled me right from under the Boers' rifles.
He was always courageous.
Just as well. Or I can tell you I shouldn't be here now. There wasn't a braver man in the whole regiment.
Nothing would ever stop Master Godfrey, sir. There's not a tree in the old park he hasn't climbed. He was a fine boy, Mr. Dodd.
I can well believe it.
And you're the witness, sir. He was a fine man.
You speak of him as if he were dead.
I don't know what you mean.
You say he was a fine man. What do you mean by that? What is all the mystery, Ralph?
You will have to ask the master that, sir. He knows.
Look here. For I'm going to ask you plain. What has become of Godfrey Emsworth?
It's not for me to interfere. Good night, sir.
Now listen. You'll answer me this one question. If I have to hold you here all night...
Please let me go, sir.
I must know. Is Godfrey dead?
I wish to God he was.
He ran from me, Mr. Holmes. I was in no very happy state of mind. Oh, God help him! I thought it plain. My poor friend had got involved in some criminal endeavour. At the least, something which touched the family honour. So badly that martinet father of his had sent him away.
Could you believe that of him?
Godfrey was sometimes easily influenced. I feared he might have fallen into bad hands, been misled to his ruin. But I knew my duty to him. I spent some time pondering how to proceed. I was anxious, restless. I got up. Godfrey! And there he was, my friend, standing before me. Dear heaven! Godfrey!
Ah, your problem begins to present some very unusual features, Mr. Dodd.
He stood outside the window, his face pressed against the glass. I thought he was a ghost. But then, his eyes met mine, and then I knew him for a living man. His face held my gaze. What a change, Mr. Holmes. He was so deathly pale.
Ill, you mean?
No, worse. Shocking. I've never seen a man so white. He sprang back.
He saw you looking at him.
I suppose so. Then he vanished into the darkness quicker than thought.
Athletic, then?
As ever he was. But slinking, furtive, somehow guilty. And that ghastly face, glimmering as white as cheese in the darkness. Mr. Holmes, I had known Godfrey as a frank, manly lad, my fellow corporal. But now...
You followed him?
I didn't wait about. When you've been soldiering a year or two out in the Cape Province, you learn to keep your nerve and act quickly. Even so, I wasn't as fast as I should have been. There was an awkward catch on the blasted window. Godfrey! I went the way I thought he must have gone. It was a long path and the light wasn't very good. Godfrey! Is that you? Wait, man! Wait for me! I thought I saw something moving ahead of me, so I tried to follow that, but... Godfrey! Oh, it's no good. Damn it! When I got to the end of the path, it split every which way, to any number of outhouses all over the park. Get the breath now. Hold it. I heard it distinctly. And it wasn't from the house behind me either. I knew then what I'd seen, Mr. Holmes. No vision. No ghost.
And the door you heard close?
That was one of the outhouses. But which one? How could I tell?
What did you do then?
Well, what more could I do in the darkness?
You went back to your room.
And I spent an uneasy night there, I can tell you. Next day, I practiced my wheedling arts upon the old colonel. He was less than keen to allow me another night's imposition upon his hospitality.
But you persuaded him.
I had to enlist Godfrey's mother to intercede for me. The old curmudgeon gave in to her eventually. Though it was touch and go, I should say.
Once it was agreed that you should stay, did they leave you to your own devices?
Yes. Mrs. Emsworth remarked there were some places of interest in the neighbourhood. So I strolled out that morning in search.
And you found what?
I found I got no further than the end of the garden, Mr. Holmes. There was one lodge there of some size. For a gamekeeper or a head gardener, it might be.
Inhabitable, then?
Well, it seemed a likely place to start. I strolled up carelessly. And then there was this man.
Not a gardener.
Not at all the gardener type, Mr. Holmes. Small, brisk, bearded, black coat and bowler hat. Good morning to you, sir.
Are you a visitor here, sir?
Certainly. A friend of the family. Well, in particular, a good pal of Godfrey Emsworth. Army chum, you know.
Ah.
A pity he should be away on his travels.
Quite so.
Yes, shame. He would have been more than glad to see me.
No doubt you will renew your visit, sir.
No doubt.
I hope at some more propitious time.
I've heard that tune better hummed. He never took his eyes off me as he went away, Mr. Holmes. To me, he looked frankly guilty.
Did you manage to get a close look at the lodge from which this man emerged?
So far as I could see, it was empty.
So far as you could see?
Well, that is, the windows were heavily curtained and I couldn't see in. I didn't want to spoil my own game by being too audacious.
Certainly not.
And I did notice the man was watching me.
He had something to conceal.
I thought so.
And is this when Colonel Emsworth ordered you off the premises?
Later. In the meantime, I went on with my inquiries.
You continue to defy your host's expressed wish?
Yes, I did.
Excellent.
I waited till night. Once the old park was quiet, I slipped my window catch and went back to the mysterious lodge. I was in luck this time. There was some light, breaking through a crack in the shutter.
A fire?
Blazing merrily. A bright lamp.
And the bearded gentleman in the bowler hat?
He was sitting opposite me, smoking a pipe, reading a newspaper.
What paper?
Well, I really took no notice.
You took no notice?
Well, no. Can it matter?
Mr. Dodd, it's essential.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. All is not lost. Possibly you observed if it was a broad-leaved newspaper?
Now you come to mention it, it wasn't large, no.
Of the kind one associates with a weekly press.
It might have been the Spectator.
Thank you.
What really struck my attention, Mr. Holmes, was the second man.
Godfrey Emsworth. Well, there's no point in your tale.
Yes, leaning upon his elbow, his body turned towards the fire. He seemed in the utmost melancholy.
You're certain it was Emsworth?
He had his back to me, but I've sat around countless Veld campfires with that man. I can say I knew him, Mr. Holmes. And then there was a sharp tap on my shoulder, and Colonel Emsworth beside me.
And you, on the next available train back to London.
Oh, this air. Fresh like...
Mountain spring water?
mountain something, anyway.
Mountain air, in all probability.
Oh, and the views, John.
Marvellous place for a sanatorium.
Yes. Yes, it would be. But I'm not sure your practice will ever be able to support that sort of thing.
Besides, you wouldn't really like to live here, would you?
Cuckoo clocks, trees, and St. Bernard dogs.
Mercenaries and the Red Cross.
And those funny chalets with the gentleman and lady who tell the weather. No, a honeymoon is one thing.
A fine thing.
A wonderful thing. But London is for the rest of our lives, isn't it? We have to allow time to build up the practice, after all, and then to reap the reward of it.
Yes, no retirement for me, unlike some.
No bees.
I find my powers undiminished, mind. Rather the contrary.
Well, I have not been disappointed.
It can be a thankless business investigation.
That's why I have turned to you, Mr. Holmes.
Well, you were right to do so. I'll go back with you to Bedford, I think.
Colonel Emsworth has expressly forbidden me to return.
I've been shown the door at many a better place than Tuxbury Old Park, Mr. Dodd. And I'd be interested in seeing how bellicose is the Colonel after I've had a word with him. Now, you say there are only 2 servants in the house.
To the best of my belief, the butler and his wife.
And no servant in the detached lodge where you believe Godfrey Emsworth's hidden.
Well, unless the little man with the beard. But he seemed to be quite a superior person.
Yes, and that is very suggestive.
Of a mystery, it seems to me.
Had you any indication that food was ever conveyed from the main house to the lodge?
I did once see old Ralph carrying a basket down the garden walk in that direction.
Yes, you've gathered together the essentials of the puzzle with great astuteness, Mr. Dodd.
Oh.
You'll be happy to hear the matter presents few difficulties in its solution.
Yes?
I'll meet you at 9:05 on Monday morning. It's in Pancras Station, in plenty of time for the down express to Bedford.
Oh, Mr. Holmes! I'd begun to think you'd missed the train.
In you come, then.
My heavens, Holmes! Do you always cut it so fine when you take a train?
And my friend Watson would tell you, gentlemen, it's my habit never merely to step onto a stationary train, nor if there's a moving one in the vicinity.
Oh, then this gentleman is not Dr. Watson.
Alas, no, sir.
Oh, my colleague and biographer has, I regret to say, deserted me for a wife. No, this is an old friend of mine from before my days as a consulting detective.
Mr. Dodd, I am glad to meet you.
It's possible the journey may prove entirely unnecessary to him.
Well, I wish you'd mentioned that, Holmes, in the first place.
On the other hand, it may be absolutely essential.
You say you saw your friend's face quite clearly at your window, Mr. Dodd.
Well, his nose was pressed against the glass, and the lamplight from my room shone full upon him. How much clearer would you like?
You see?
I'm prepared to accept that it was indeed him, but you say he was changed, sir.
In colour, yes. His face was... I don't quite know how to describe it.
White as cheese, I think you said?
Yes, almost. A kind of fish belly whiteness. It was bleached.
You say fish belly white, like scales.
Well, you see, no difficulty, really.
You didn't notice his hands by any chance?
No?
Pity.
Look, gentlemen, if you have solved this mystery, I'd be grateful that you should let me know. I've hardly slept for a week for worrying about Godfrey.
Well, to be candid with you, Mr. Dodd, there remain 1 or 2 details to be cleared up.
Details?
The most interesting parts of the case, sir, are always the details.